Hello, welcome to I Have a Voice. Today we're covering a very important topic, how to overcome grief and loss. How many of you all have experienced grief and loss in your
Mhm.
life? Yeah, every one of us.
Mhm.
We've lost grandparents, perhaps parents, siblings, close friends, and
Pets,
pets,
children,
jobs, relationships,
mhm.
all those are losses. And as a
Homes.
homes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, especially if you live in South Louisiana.
With
But we've all experienced losses, and today we're going to cover the healing process, the stages that you naturally go through in order to heal from a loss. And not only that, at the end, we're going to cover the three attitudes that you need to have in order to swiftly move through the grieving process and heal. So make sure you stay to the end and get those three attitudes that you need to have in order to move swiftly through the grief process. I'm Dean Sinceri, my wife here, HollyKem Sinceri. We're partners in life. And we've also both ministers, but we've also been in the mental health field for over 30 years. So we're going to share with you some of the things that we've learned over the years. So today is, as I said, how to overcome grief and loss. And we actually call it the healing process, right?
yes.
Because it's a healing process. If you cut your arm and you start bleeding, your body will do an automatic process to heal the arm. It'll
Mhm.
start sending white blood cells, it'll start coagulating, it'll start scabbing, and there's a whole natural process that you go through that will automatically happen. Now your job is to do your part by keeping the area clean, by not going out and gardening and getting it infected. And so it's the same with the grief process. God has designed us to go through a healing process whenever we experience a loss. And our job is to work with that process so that we can move through it and not get what?
Stuck.
Stuck in it.
Yeah.
Because when you get stuck, what happens?
You stay in pain.
You stay in pain.
Yeah. And then you attract what you haven't grieved. So then you grieving it twice.
Yes. And you
Yes.
staying in it.
And you stay in it and you don't want to stay in it.
It's not good.
Mm-mm.
So let's talk a little bit about grief before we get into the process. What is a loss that causes grief? Well,
Mm.
it can be all types of losses.
Yeah.
Obviously, the most obvious one is the death of a loved one, someone that we're really close to, that we love dearly, and they pass on. There's a process we go through. But a lot of us experience grief through the loss of relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, if 50% of our marriages end in divorce, that's devastating.
Yes.
And so there's a whole grief process that if you've experienced that, you have to go through in order to heal. Some of us have experienced sudden losses of jobs
Yeah.
or losses that have to do with sudden illness or sickness. So a loss is whenever we lose something that's important to us. And once that happens, we automatically start going into this process.
Mm-hmm.
And the process we call this healing process is the grief process. And there was a researcher, Kubler-Ross, years ago, who identified 5 stages, which we're going to go through. And this is typically the natural healing process that we go through. And HollyKem's going to talk some about what that process is.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Yeah, the grief process is number one is that we deny internally, we go into denial, we go into that this isn't happening to us. Because you'll hear people say, I can't believe this is happening. I just can't even believe it. Like you just can't even, your mind will not even go into the arena of that, whatever that thing or person was, is not going to be there anymore. The way it feels is shock and numbness. Just you just feel empty, like you it's almost like a deer staring in the headlights, like, this is unbelievable, you know. So in that part, it's just an automatic thing that happens to us. um the next thing that happens, number two, is anger. Is that we get really angry, we can become rageful, and we become very frustrated that we're angry that we lost this thing that's so important to us. That, you know, I'm angry that my spouse died, I'm angry that my child died, I'm angry that I've lost my job, I'm angry that let's see, I'm angry that I've had a miscarriage, you know,
Angry with God.
angry with God, I'm angry with everybody, really. Um, and it's not a very comfortable place, but that's when we just start to just anything that was a part of what we've lost, we get angry with it and at it. The third thing that happens is it's called the bargaining. And in the bargaining, we feel guilt and shame. But I always like to call the bargaining the if part. Number three is like if. If I'd have done this, then that wouldn't have happened. If I'd have done this, this wouldn't have happened. If she'd have done that, that wouldn't have happened. So we go into, well, maybe if I wouldn't have ever gotten married to him, I wouldn't be divorced. If but then I wouldn't have my kids. So, you know, it goes back and forth, back and forth. It's like this mind game of bargaining where, you know, how could I get out of this really? So from there, it goes into pain. And pain is sadness, depression, hurt, the sadness of the deep heartfelt pain of losing what matters to me so much. My person, a job, a marriage, my child, my dreams. And this is very intense pain. As much as it mattered to you, that's how deep the pain goes. So if it's something that is like, if there's 1 to 100 and it's a 99, it's that important to you, then the pain's going to be a 99. They're going to be equally matched. Then there is acceptance. It's not that we are accepting that whatever I lost is okay. We're accepting that this has happened to me, and that if there is someone that I need to forgive, then I need to do that. And then the peace comes, the internal peace comes once I start to accept the belief of what has happened and what I have lost.
Yeah, and as you see in that process, it's really an emotional process. It's not
Yes.
an intellectual process. And so some of us guys out there, we're very good with thinking, but we're not always good with processing our emotions. And that if we don't learn to do that effectively, we will get stuck in the process.
Yeah. Do you have on there like how it doesn't go in order?
No, but you can
Okay.
talk about that.
All right. Just want to check. Now, one of the things is it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If
Yeah.
it did, it would be a lot easier. As it's number one is first, number two is happening, number three is happening. The problem is a lot of us go from 3 back to 1. We go from bargaining to denial. Then from there, we will go straight into pain. And then sometimes we go into anger. So it's almost like a graph. Like I start at 1, I go to 2, I go to 3, I might go back to 1, then I go to 4, then I go back. But every time I hit 4, every time I hit the pain, then I get to some acceptance. As much pain as I hit, that's how much acceptance I get. But what's going to happen is you're going to go back to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to hit some acceptance. So it's a process. It's a constant graph. You're not, and the problem is like if both of us lost something that mattered to us, the same thing, we're not going to be on the same one at the same time.
Yeah.
That's why when a couple loses a child, they 85% get a divorce. It's, you know, it's really, really high because one is in pain, one is angry, one is in denial, one is bargaining. It's not very often that you will be in the same part of the grief process at the same time. even if you've lost the same thing. So a lot of times I say, well, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to bring him in. I don't want to make him hurt. Well, he's already hurting. So, if you have something that a couple has lost or a family has lost at the same time, it's best to have like a weekly meeting, or every 2 weeks you have some, and you just start to process where you added this. How are you feeling about this? And everybody tell a story about whatever it was that they lost, that they missed. And it allows everybody to be in a different place, but be together in a different place.
Yeah, and as you notice, the problem of staying stuck is when we keep it internalized.
Yes.
The process of healing comes when I have a voice and we externalize.
Yes.
And so there's a general rule in counseling. We say you either talk it out or you act it out.
Yes.
And if you're in a lot of emotional pain, you need to hear this. If you're in emotional pain about a loss and you're not talking it out, you will act it out, either towards the other person or through withdrawal. Couples that lose, perhaps like a child, why that's so difficult is that oftentimes they may not have the tools to talk it out with each other, and the grief drives them apart.
Yeah.
And so it'll either bring them closer together ultimately, or it'll drive them apart. And we have so many rituals to help us talk it out, to get it out. If you notice, when somebody dies, right, what happens is you have a wake service, and you go and talk and honor the person. There's a funeral, there's a burial, there's we may bring flowers to the grave, we may mark the anniversary, we may do certain rituals to give us permission to honor the person, but also to continue to externalize that in which we carry. And that is so, so important. Oftentimes we're taught, especially as men, to hold it on the inside, be tough, be disconnected from emotions. And that's a formula for tragedy.
Yeah.
Then we start sedating through alcohol, we start sedating through drugs, we start getting caught up in work and not going, I remember reading scripture about deaths in the Bible. It's interesting, like when Jacob died, Joseph made all of Egypt mourn. I think it's for 70 days.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. There's interesting. When Moses died, there was, I don't know if it was 30 days or 7 days. There was a time of mourning for the whole nation. Like there was a time frame that was given, and it was repeated over and over again. It was interesting. It's like a time thing to honor the grief. Look, in our culture, you could lose someone significant to you, and you get a day off of work, and then you're supposed to go back and act like really nothing really happened. I mean, we don't do a real good job in honoring our grief, but it is so important, because if we don't, we get stuck in the process. How many of you all know someone that's stuck in the anger stage and just seems to be angry at everything, or stuck in the depression stage of grief? They've experienced a significant loss, they haven't processed, and they're stuck in that stage, and they're living from that stage. How many do you know that are stuck in the sense of feeling guilt and shame about what they've done, or their behavior, and are just can't look the world in the eye? Or even the first stage, denial. How many individuals do you know that are just in denial, that are not living in the same world, right? And sometimes that's rooted in experiencing significant losses or even trauma,
Which is a loss.
And not working through it. So as HollyKem showed you, there's these different stages that we cycle in and out. But the most important thing is to be loved in it, to give voice to it, and to work it out. And then that's the healing process.
Right.
And that brings us to this next point. The grief process is a process,
Right.
And it's not an event.
Definitely.
And I have as a subtitle there, it is an intensive season.
Yeah.
We have seasons, right? we're in winter right now in New Orleans. So it might be 70 degrees, 80 degrees, and tomorrow it might be 45. But, other places like our friends in Minnesota
Right.
experience the winter season. But a season is a time period. Winter is a good example of the grief process, right? Everything dies. Everything slows down. It's cold. It's emotionally tough. And that grief is a season that you go into, and it lasts for a period of time, and then you come out of it.
Yeah.
Now, how long is the season? Well, how big was the loss?
Right.
If it was a small loss, the season might be a few days, right?
Right.
If it was a very significant loss, it could be 6 months, it could be a year,
Right.
where it's an intensive season. So we just want to encourage you to honor the seasons.
Right. And the other thing too with that is that it's not like you're going to be in one of the, one of the parts of the process forever.
Right.
Unless you stop it. So as bad as it feels to be angry at whatever, or as bad as it feels to be in the pain from that, the issue is that you need to embrace that, because it will be less, it will not take as long to go through. Whereas if you stop it and you try to hold it and make it like disappear through, sedation or busyness or, workaholism, whatever, then it lasts longer. It's longer and longer and longer. So you really do want to nurture it. It's kind of like if you broke your arm. No, do you want to go to the hospital and see what's wrong with it and go through the x-rays, and then they tell you it's broken, and then you have to have surgery, or you have to have it pulled and put in place with a cast? No, don't want to do it. However, if you don't, you will have permanent damage to your arm, and then it will be worse than when you have to go back and they have to really break it again, and God knows what they would have to do. So it's better to go with it, because it has to happen. It's a natural thing.
Yeah, that's good. Tell us, are there any losses that you are actively grieving right now?
Yes.
Let us know what those are, because we all have losses, and we're hoping to help you through that process. Now, let's look at three attitudes to adopt while you're grieving. If you adopt these three attitudes, you will fluidly move through this healing process and move to a place of healing. Just like that cut on your arm, you take care of it, you put a Band-Aid on it, you keep it protected. It will heal. It might have a little scab, maybe a little sensitive scar, but it will heal. HollyKem and I want to tell you today.
But you will always have a scar.
You will have a scar.
But it's to help you remember what's important to you.
And you will heal.
Yes.
You will heal. Mm-hmm. So these are the three attitudes that you need to have in order to move through the grief process fluidly. One, you need to be mentally alert. And I'm going to go into each of these in a second. Two, you need to be emotionally vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And three, you need to be spiritually dependent. Mm-hmm. Let's look at mentally alert. What does that mean? Mentally alert means that I need to be alert to what's going on and be mindful, to be aware of what's happening to me right now. Mm-hmm. I'm in the season, and as HollyKem explained the different stages, I need to know, what stage am I in? Mm-hmm. Is my heart just really hurting? Am I angry? Am I feeling guilty? Am I in denial? Am I moving into acceptance and forgiveness? I need to be mentally alert of where I am. And if I have a loving partner, I need to communicate that consistently. Yeah. Honey, I'm just really feeling guilty about what happened. And I have lots of regret. And if only I would have did this, this, and this, and we talk it out. Oh, honey, my heart's really hurting today. You know, it was hard to get out of bed. My heart's just really hurting. It's really heavy. I need to communicate. And in order to communicate, I need to be mentally alert
Yeah.
of what's happening. Make sense?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Number two, you need to be emotionally vulnerable. How many of y'all like to be emotionally vulnerable? Hardly anybody except her.
Well, that's because I know the reward.
You know the reward.
That's the only reason. It's not like I like going being like an emotional mess, but I understand the reward to it. That's why I do it. Oh goodness.
No, that's one of HollyKem's greatest strengths, really, is that her emotional vulnerability, her authenticness, how real she is. And that's what I absolutely love about her.
Thank you.
Of those things. Yeah. But emotionally vulnerable. Now, I can't say the same about myself. I mean, it's a life's work. I've gotten better over it over the years, you know. But emotionally vulnerable means that I need to be willing to communicate what I'm feeling in my heart.
Now let's go here.
All right.
All right. So most people do not enjoy this, and there's a reason. It's because, unfortunately, and I'm not blaming people for the way they are because it happened to them. So we're just going to use it as a fact. But sometimes if what are you doing having, why are you crying? You want me to give you something to cry about? You think you mad now? Let me show you how mad you gonna get. So we've heard those things. Like it's really like I remember in my family having a feeling was like having a roach in the room. Kill it, get rid of it. So emotionally say, when you're having emotions, then everybody around you gets triggered. So it's kind of like when you go to the restaurant and you just want to have a relaxing dinner and you're about to drop 150 bucks, and the baby comes in and he's crying and crying and crying. And you're like, oh, get the baby out of here. Not that you don't like the baby, but that emotional pain, the baby's triggering some leftover emotional pain you have in your life that you went to dinner because you didn't want to cook and feel all that at that moment. So in that, when you bring that up, people around you also, it triggers theirs, maybe on something different. However, with the goal here is to find someone that is safe, that's emotionally safe. You don't just do it anywhere unless you're very strong and can handle the feedback. Other than that, you want to have a friend that you can do with, a therapist, a life coach, a pastor, a priest, whoever is emotionally safe for you. Don't just go where it's not emotionally safe because you're going to get beat up emotionally. And that's the worst thing that can happen.
Yes, and so to grieve in the context of a loving community,
Yes.
whether that's in your family, whether that's a support group, whether it's your church, whether it's a friend group, is that grieve in the midst of a loving community.
Yes.
I remember reading way back, 20, 30 years ago about the men's movement, guy Robert Bly, who wrote a lot of things, and it was interesting. He said that many of us men are stuck in emotional adolescence, is his observation. So it goes with women too, but that we're stuck in emotional adolescence, and that even though we may be in men's bodies 30, 40, 50 years old, we're still desiring all the things of adolescence. Wanting to go out at night, hang out with the guys, not be faithful to our wife. I mean, all the things that go with adolescence, be rebellious. And what he said was he found when a man learns how to embrace his grief, he will move from emotional adolescence into emotional adulthood and will start feeling and desiring all the things of manhood, being a provider, being a protector of the home, being committed, being emotionally involved in family life. And so it's an interesting thing as a rite of passage is, and I think it goes for women too, is that when we learn to properly embrace our grief, emotionally be vulnerable and give voice to it, that we begin to move and become more emotionally mature, and we feel that. we start to feel our age. It's not good to be 56 and I feel like a 6-year-old,
No.
right? Or act like a 6-year-old. No, no.
No.
I have to continue mature. And we do that according to what Robert was saying, was that part of it is by embracing your grief, being emotionally intelligent. Let's get to the third attitude. So we said the first one is to be mentally alert. Number 2 is to be emotionally vulnerable. The third is this: it's to be spiritually dependent. And what I mean is that there's a big difference between grieving with God and grieving without Him.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. There is a very big difference between grieving with God and grieving without Him. And that when we're grieving, we need to lean on Him, lean on our relationship and our understanding of Him, invite Him into us. And those throughout HollyKem and I for 30 years have seen the difference between those who grieve with God and those who grieve without God. And the ones that grieve with God in an honest and authentic way accelerate through the process, experience healing quicker, move a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so we need you to realize that grieving with Him actually leads to hope, and grieving without Him leads to despair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is that you're not alone in it. You know, that as much as you can get angry with God that you've had this loss, God can handle it. I mean, He can handle you being angry with Him. He put the process in order. So through that, that becomes part of it. But at least you're in a communication. I mean, you never get angry with anybody you don't care about, because if you don't care about them, why, it doesn't matter. You get upset with people that you care about. So, because you're attached. So to have, Jesus, God, the Holy Spirit involved in this loss, that it becomes a very big thing. I know for myself, I always would write letters to God or in my journal and tell Him and tell Jesus what was going on. And I would always feel this silent answer inside of this is what's next, or it's okay, or I hear you. There was always something that I felt. It was a true feeling of a knowing of an answer.
Yeah.
For what I wrote.
Yeah. So we really encourage you to lean on Him and to practice these 3 attitudes of being mentally alert, being emotionally vulnerable, and third, spiritually dependent, and leaning on Him and letting His grace flow into the wound, into your heart, into all the places that are in pain, and let His salve, His peace, His comfort come upon you. And it's real.
Yeah.
It's a very real reality that's so important, because there's a saying that you either, as you grow, you either become bitter or better.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, the movie Titanic.
Yeah.
Okay. In the end, when you see Rose at her house with her granddaughter.
Yeah.
She has all these pictures. I don't know if you noticed it when you saw the movie, but she has all these pictures of everything that Jack told her they were going to do in their life. And we know that he died. So she did not get to experience life with him off of the Titanic. So, but all of these pictures she had, of what he talked about that they were going to do. And through that, she grieved. I felt like that was a way she grieved his losses by also continuing to live the dream that they had. And it was so powerful to me, because she lost so much and she continued to give up her family at that point. And she went and lived the life Jack had showed her and told her about. So through that process, it's like she became better. She didn't become bitter. And she, when she was at the end, when they found whatever, and she's at the end of the boat with her arms raised again, it's like she was free to live. She did not die with him. Her dreams, and it's just a good example. I love movies.
Yeah. And as HollyKem is saying, you get bitter or better.
Yeah.
And we get bitter when we don't know how to grieve properly.
Right.
We have losses and we haven't grieved properly, and so it creates bitterness. And if we learn to grieve properly based on doing these three attitudes: mentally alert, emotionally vulnerable, spiritually dependent, we actually become better, more mature, wise as we continue to age.
I know it's time, but I always do this little thing with my clients.
Yeah.
About the bitter grandma and the better and the grandmas. Okay.
So give us the bitter one.
Okay. The bitter grandma is May. Why? What took you so long to get over here? I had lunch ready for the last hour and a half. I can't believe it took you so long. Like, she's so angry. Like, well, Mama, it's it's 11:30. Child, you know I got my lunch ready at 10 o'clock. But it's like she's mad at everything, and you love your grandma, but just think about it. Your grandma's lost a lot of people in her life, her parents, her siblings, possibly.
What's the better one?
The better one is, oh, Shad, took you so long to get here. I miss you. Why are you here so late? Well, Mama, it's 11:30. I mean, but Shad, don't you know I had it ready for 10 o'clock? Oh, but come eat. Oh, thank you, Mama. I'm so happy. I'm gonna work on it, Mama, to come earlier next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama.
Yeah.
So tell us what you learned today in the comments. What did you learn about the grief process? And we also have 2 videos. That one is on dealing with seasonal depression, and then the other one is on a 1-minute video on 3 tips to deal with seasonal depression. So those are on the screen right now. Check on those and go into a little deeper if you dealing with any depression. But thank you so much for joining us today on I Have a Voice, and we say,
have a voice.
Have a voice.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.